Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me in the locker room for an author's afternoon on this Tuesday, January 24th. I'm Alan Locker. Lisa Guerrero is an award-winning journalist, actress, sportscaster, artist, and author. She has been an investigative correspondent for the nationally syndicated news magazine Inside Edition for the past 17 years. Lisa is joining me today to discuss her amazing new memoir, Warrior: My Path to Being Brave, which chronicles her journey from a shy, insecure 8-year-old girl who lost her mother to cancer to launching a career as a model and actress in her teens, to transitioning to NFL cheerleading and sportscasting in her 20s, to eventually landing as an investigative journalist, where she has won over 40 national awards and honors, chasing the bad guys on Inside Edition. Her book tracks her journey of overcoming challenges and obstacles in both her career and personal life while learning how to practice bravery on a daily basis. And this book and Lisa can help you tap into your inner superhero as well. Lisa is bombarded with emails and direct messages from people of every generation who all want to know the same thing. How are you so brave? How can I be brave as well? Warrior is filled with the incisive stories of failure, struggle, challenges, perseverance, and finally, success is her answer. The book is out right now, and I encourage you all to pick it up. Please welcome to the locker room, Lisa Guerrero. Hey, Lisa.
Hi, Alan. How are you?
So good to see you again, and congratulations on an amazing book that I really think is going to help a lot of people. You touch on so many things.
Thank you. First of all, I'm happy to be back. Thank you for asking me, and thank you for reading my book. Um,
Of course.
it, that was a really great introduction, and it really hit on a lot of what the book talks about. Um, I guess by way of explanation, the title "Warrior"
Oh
actually.
yeah, I'm gonna get to
You're gonna
that.
get to
But you
that.
know what? I wanted
Okay.
to
I won't
read.
jump ahead.
Okay, I wanted to read what Deborah Norville wrote for you for the book. Lisa's personal story is a roadmap for anyone who has big dreams and only needs to believe in themselves to achieve them. And I just think that really, in a nutshell, captured your book.
I thank you for saying that because, and obviously thank you, Deborah, for writing that. She's the host of Inside Edition and my dear friend, and I'm so thrilled that she took the time to read the book and to lend a quote for me. Um, I think we all look at our heroes on television or in sports or, in film or, out there crusading somehow, in politics or social justice. And we say to ourselves, they're so brave. How can I be that brave? They must have been born brave. And my book is actually saying, no, I don't believe people are born brave, but I believe that you can become more brave every day through practice and exercise, and also by living a life of challenges, because it's not the challenges that make you a brave person, it's how you have overcome those challenges that leave your true legacy of courage. So my book is about that, and I use myself as an example throughout the book of talking about these real, true, traumatic things that have happened to me and how I dealt with them and how they made me more brave.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of challenges, but the book has been a dream of yours, and you've worked on it for a long time. What initially prompted you to want to write it and put it out for the world?
So, when I was a sportscaster in Los Angeles in the 90s, I was one of the few females in the locker rooms covering the Dodgers and the Lakers and the Kings and UCLA and USC. And I found myself kind of the center of a lot of attention because people kept asking me about what it was like to be, one of the very few women covering sports at the time, the first Latina of prominence in Los Angeles and one of the first females on the national landscape at the time. And I realized there was a lot of interest in what I was doing and kind of my interpretation of sports. And I started writing a column in a local Los Angeles based sports magazine called Street Zebra. It was called Notes from a Sports Chick. And that quickly became a very popular column in the magazine. And I realized, wait a minute, I should be really documenting my life and my experiences. I had already been keeping a journal and had kept a journal since I was a little girl. So now I started specifically writing about my experiences on camera. And eventually I got a deal from CBS to have them option my life story as a potential TV series. This is also going back to the late 90s now. And there was a lot of interest in my life. But back then, the executive said, there's really, although we know you're a sportscaster, we don't know if audiences would really believe that somebody that looks like you knows sports. So they decided not to do the sitcom back then because they just thought it was too unbelievable for this woman who'd been on a soap opera, Sunset Beach, and had been a model, was now a sportscaster asking these tough questions of these massive megastar athletes. So, fast forward, I kept keeping my notes and keeping my journals. I ended up rising through the ranks of local to regional to national sports prominence. I ended up on Monday Night Football. My book documents what happened to me along the way, the good parts and the bad parts. And I just kept journaling and keeping notes.
I
And
think that's a message right there too
yeah,
for people,
yeah.
because talk about just having that at your fingertips to, go back and pull from had to be, make it a little easier. I'm sure it wasn't easy to write all of this, because you really do share, many of the challenges and the painful parts. But having kept that journal must have been a godsend.
My I write in my acknowledgments at the end that this book had been decades in the making. But I remember as a little girl, I visited my grandpa on my paternal side, my grandpa Coles, who was a Salvation Army minister. And he, in his office, he had this entire wall, Alan, of journals, these red notebooks. He had kept a journal every day of his life. And in his journal, he wrote about who he met, what they said, how he witnessed to them, and notes for his sermon for the next Sunday. And so when I was little, I thought, I kind of fantasized about that. What if I kept a journal and could remember all these experiences in my life? And now I realize how important journaling is therapeutically, right?
Mm.
It's so good for us. We all face challenges. We all feel alone sometimes. We all want to articulate what's happening to us and to get things off our chest. And by journaling, and I used to journal at night, and it would help me sleep better. I would get all of those anxieties and all those thoughts out of my head and onto paper. And I found that it was really good for, not only good for documenting my life, but good for my spirit. So I really suggest that people, journal or do art, something creatively to get their thoughts and their feelings down on paper.
I love that. I love that. So the title, today, what does being brave mean to Lisa Guerrero?
Wow. As you will read in my book, that has changed. The journey that I've had in terms of what bravery means started when I was 8 years old, when my mother, who faced cancer, pulled me aside and wanted me to know that my last name, her last name, because she was a Guerrero, she wanted me to know that my last name, Guerrero, meant warrior and that I was born to fight. I didn't know what that meant at 8 years old. I wasn't brave, and she died 2 months later. So I
Mm.
was the furthest thing away from being brave. But as my life progressed, I started realizing that my mother's words were a lesson for me and a roadmap for me. Because when I didn't feel brave, I thought to myself, but my legacy is Guerrero, warrior. Her last name was Warrior. So although I was born Lisa Coles to an American father, my mother, who was a Chilean immigrant, told me that I was a warrior and I had that legacy to fulfill. So every time as I got older, I faced these traumas or these challenges, something inside me said, don't forget, you're a warrior. You were born to fight. So now at 58, I look back on my life and I realize that she left me with such a gift, a
Which,
gift
yeah,
of identity.
which God works in mysterious ways, they say, right? Like the fact that she shared that
Yeah.
in the short time that you had with her and the impact that those words had on you is incredible. And
And the
and
impact of identity, the impact of identity, Alan, and who we choose to be, how we choose to identify ourselves, which is a very topical, conversation these days. I chose when I was in my 20s to legally change my last name to Guerrero because I wanted to identify as Latina. I wanted to identify as a warrior. I wanted to tell myself every day, Lisa, when you wake up and you go out and you do your TV shows as an actress or a broadcaster, they're going to put your name in the credits. And that last name, Lisa Guerrero, may be meaningful to a young Latina out there who might be 6 or 7 years old, who has never seen anybody with her last name that can identify with her through television or the media. They say if you can see it, you can be it. I wanted to be that person that young women could look up to and say, I can be somebody on television. I can have a career in broadcasting or acting as a Latina.
what a legacy your mom helped you leave. I mean,
Yeah.
seriously, it's amazing. I mentioned in the intro, people, ask you all the time, how are you so brave? Is there one answer to that question?
I think there is. I'm brave because I practiced being brave. I practiced through times, just like you can build your muscle to become stronger every day. You can practice small acts of courage every day that over time make you a more courageous person. An example, I do a lot of keynote speaking to both, corporate events and nonprofit and I talk to kids a lot as well. And I tell the kids, one way that you can show that you're brave every day is to do one small brave thing. For example, sit next to the kid during lunch that nobody else wants to sit next to. That that is a brave thing for a child to do. Be
Hmm.
the first person to raise your hand in class when the teacher asks you a question. That is a very brave thing to do. If you do little small acts of bravery every day, over time, your go to position will be that of bravery. And it works. It's like magic. When you practice being brave, you become more brave.
I love that. From hearing from people you've met over the years and those questions about how are you so brave, is there a message or possibly someone you've shared your wisdom with that sticks out in your mind?
There is. There's so many because, my job right now as the chief investigative correspondent for Inside Edition means that I chase bad guys. But before I get to the part where people see me grabbing the microphone and hunting down, criminals or scam artists, the first thing I do is I interview the victims or survivors of that crime or that trauma, and they open up to me and they tell me about this horrible thing that happened to them. So they entrust me with their story, and it's their strength that makes me brave. That empathy that I have towards them makes me brave. I'm not brave because I'm an audacious brave person. I'm brave because that person has chosen me to help tell their story, so they've entrusted me to be brave. I think about, these women that have shared with me stories of sexual assault or sexual harassment. There we've done multiple stories on, coaches that have sexually assaulted their athletes, or, teachers who were in a position of trust that hurt or sexually harassed or even raped their students. They've these victims and survivors have told me about this, but they have already proven their bravery by telling their story to me. That is a massive, massive, uh, massively difficult thing to do. To open up on camera to a stranger about something so private and personal and traumatic is brave, but they're doing it because they don't want it to happen to somebody else. So I think of those young women who've shared those experiences with me, those older women. I'm also the host of Secrets of Playboy on A&E, and we're getting ready to do our second season of the show soon. And those women, a lot of them have shared with me that they've said they were abused or traumatized at the Playboy Mansion, and it's taken them decades to come forward and share their stories so that other people will understand about that trauma and abuse so that it doesn't happen to other women. Those are the real heroes, and those are the real brave women in my life, the survivors and the victims that share their stories with me.
Incredible. A lot of the stories you share are really painful. Losing your mother at 8 years old. How do you think, the impact of that shaped who you are today?
Wow, it was a double-edged sword. Obviously, it was very difficult to grow up without a mother. Nobody taught me how to do my makeup or how to do my hair or how to shave my legs or how to dress or how to talk to boys. Nobody shared with me about, a first period or anything. I didn't have a mother to share those things that mothers and daughters share together. It was extremely lonely for me growing up. The good news was I have an incredible father who was able to fill in the gaps as well as he could with honesty and empathy and kindness. So my father really had to be a mother and a father. So I was really lucky to have him. His background was in social working. He got his master's from the University of Chicago in social services, and he worked for the Salvation Army for a long time as a social worker. So he has this built-in empathy chip.
Mm,
So when he raised his two children after his wife died, but my brother and I were 6 and 8, and he was a young man, he quit his job so he could work from home, and he became a stay-at-home father for us. So I was really blessed with the best dad in the world. And so even though I don't have my mother with me, I have her every day with me in spirit. And when I look in the mirror, I see my mother. My
mm,
mother was Chilean, and I look like my mother. I have the dark hair and the dark eyes and the more olive skin tone. My father's blue-eyed English, Southern
mm.
white boy. And so I feel like I identify more closely with her side and what she looks like. But I identify in spirit and empathy with my father. So I think I have the best of both worlds between the
Yeah,
two of
you
them.
share some incredible stories about, both your mother and father, but your dad, and how much he steps up to the plate. And one of the things, your dad put you in theater therapy, which I had never heard about. Can you tell us a little about that?
I was so lucky to have grown up in San Diego near the Old Globe Theater, which has a junior theater program. And I went to the junior theater program, and for a while, and maybe they still do, they were offering grief therapy um,
Wow.
for children that would use theater to help them act out and consider um, and formulate ways to deal with their emotions through being on stage and through taking roles and working out their feelings about life and death and love and loss. And so when I was 8 years old, my dad brilliantly enrolled me in junior theater in San Diego in Balboa Park at the Old Globe Theater, and they were offering this opportunity for me to have grief therapy. And at the same time, he put my brother Richard in music therapy. And my brother ended up being a professional musician and a pilot, and I ended up being a professional actress and broadcaster. So somehow my dad knew what we needed to express our grief. And,
That's
children need to play out. They need to have somebody understand their emotions. They need to be able to express their emotions in a safe way. And that's what theater did for me early on. And that's why I chose to become an actress later on.
I mean, it's incredible because I don't know how many parents or, one parent would know in that situation to do that. And what a amazing step and helpful step to help you express your emotions at a really difficult time that would be hard on anybody. I mean, it's hard at any age when you lose a parent, but at 8 years
Right.
old.
Right. It was pretty horrific. I will say this, having gone through grief therapy, they taught us, in acting, there's kind of two forms of acting, method and technique. And grief therapy really dives into the method end of acting. And, it also dabbles a little bit in technique as well, how to control and how to bring up your emotions without having to be that person and to kind of wallow in those emotions. So it kind of taught me both techniques. So it was fun as an actor to be able to play at acting with my co-stars that were either technique based or method based. I could switch back and forth between those two forms of acting really easily. I can cry on command, which was really helpful for Sunset Beach. My
Yeah.
character, my character was mainly a villainess. She was making other people cry, but she sure did have some tearful scenes herself. But I'm able to cry on command. Thank you to that kind of training that I had that, for practical purposes, really helped me as an actor.
Wow. 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 You talk about your last name, Guerrero, and witnessing your mom be a warrior in the book. I would assume in many instances, but is there a particular moment during your career or personal life that you sort of felt like mom and felt like that warrior?
I thank you for asking that. That's an interesting question. Early on, I described this scene in my book that I'll never forget. I was probably 7 and she must have been 28. We were at a Pier 1 store in San Diego, and my mother, of course, was an immigrant, so her first language was Spanish. She learned English as a teenager, so she had a very thick accent, and she was trying to return something at the cashier's, desk. And the lady behind us, this blonde lady, was very frustrated with my mother trying to communicate with the cashier. And she said, go back to Mexico, to my mother. And my mother whipped around, her long black hair whipping around, and she stood up to her full height and she looked the woman in the eye and she said, I'm from Chile, not Mexico. That is a different continent, you ignorant woman. And then she flipped back around, finished her business at the cashier, grabbed my hand, and we stalked out of that Pier 1. And I remember thinking in the parking lot, kind of shaking, because I had never seen my mother yell at anybody. And she was obviously defending herself. But I remember thinking to myself, she's a warrior. Look at her. She's like a superhero. And that image just was so important to me as I got older. And I started to do confrontations for Inside Edition, because a big part of my job, of course, is chasing down bad guys and demanding accountability from people who hurt others. And to stand there and to look somebody in the eye and demand answers from them, and to say, why did you hurt somebody? This victim told me that you did this. What is your response? For me to be able to do that requires a lot of strength and grit and confidence. But I look back at my mother, that young woman at 28, who wasn't going to let that Karen, I'll use that term,
Brilliant.
that
Brilliant.
Karen
Yes.
put her in her place. Her place wasn't to go back to Mexico. She wasn't even from Mexico. Her place was here in America where she belonged.
Well, my mother was an immigrant as well. Her, learned
Oh,
English watching As the World Turns and Guiding Light, the two shows I worked on. So
Oh, where
you
is
know,
she from? Where was she from, Alan?
Holland. She my parents were
Amazing.
from Amsterdam and moved here after the war, so Holocaust
Wow.
survivors.
Oh, bless her heart. Bless them. Oh,
Yeah,
what a
they're no longer
legacy.
here, but yeah, I've only, it took me a long time to understand the impact of that, but I try to use now the locker room in some ways to share their story. So, because as we all know, ridiculously, anti-Semitism is on the rise in 2022, in 23, and it's ridiculous. So,
It is, and we all have to be vigilant about it. We all have to use our inner badass, our inner courage, our inner guerrero to see something and say something. Because if we don't stop that where we see it, whether it's on social media or real life, then it will continue to grow, right? It's up to us as good people to say, no, not on my watch, not on my watch.
correct. Well, truthfully, I wouldn't be here interviewing you if good people didn't take my mother in and saved her and my grandmother's life. I would not,
Are you need to write a book, Alan.
I
You have
know.
a book in you. Please write your book.
I know people, some people have said that
Yeah,
it took me a long
yeah.
time to get it, but to understand the impact of that, the fact that, especially the family that saved my mother risked 11 lives. The parents had 9 children and took in 2 strangers and saved their lives.
It's a movie.
That's,
It's a book. It's
they
we
were
needs to be
warriors.
shared. They were
They were
warriors.
warriors that, to take them in. Well, you had me at this part in the book, because you and I are relatively the same age, grew up watching the same programs, but your heroes, Princess Diana, Kelly Garrett, Pepper, you had me, but I get it. Those were your role models.
My role models were those women on 70s television
Yeah.
that were glamorous, that fought for justice, that wore fabulous clothes and had fabulous hair and makeup, and yet they were going to chase the bad guys. They were going to work on behalf of victims. And I remember being alone in the 70s watching all of these shows and not having sisters or a mother or any friends, really. I was such a shy, quiet girl, and watching the Avengers and watching Policewoman and Charlie's Angels and my favorite of all, Wonder Woman, you know, fight for
Fight for
others.
your,
And
yeah,
I
fight for
just
your right?
it
Yeah.
was amazing. And they were bad, they were physically strong, right? They ran, they fought, they did karate, they pulled guns, if they had a badge. And they were very clearly physically going to stand up for people. So that really impacted me. And when I was little, I would practice that. I would go around my room in San Diego and peek into the closets and under the beds looking for the bad guy, and going through the hallways and recruiting my little brother to slap the handcuffs on this bad guy I found over in the corner in the kitchen. We have to bring him to justice. So after practicing that for so long, it became easier for me when I was called into action. When a bully hurt my brother, I flew into action because I had been practicing being brave in my house. And so when push came to shove, literally, I became the person who stood up for my brother and fought the bully at my school. And sure enough, after that, nobody bullied my brother or I again. And I became known as that girl who stood up to the bully. So thank you to Charlie's Angels and Wonder Woman and the Bionic Woman, all of you.
Oh God, yeah, I forgot about her. Yeah.
Jamie.
I thought I was bionic.
Jamie.
From $6 Million Man and Bionic Woman. Boy, did I think I was bionic. You
They were
actually
the
mentioned that
best.
you were, you didn't have a lot of friends and you were a loner. But you fell into cheerleading. Talk about the impact that had on really changing everything for you.
Well, when I was in high school, I tried out for cheerleading and didn't make it. So I was very awkward, and I didn't have enough dance background, and the cheerleaders at
But
Edison
again,
High
that's
School were
brave
really
just
good.
going out for it.
Well, yeah, I thought, well, I looked at the cheerleaders and I wanted to be like that, and back then too, the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders were a thing in the 70s. And I just looked at these cheerleaders as being, like goddesses. And so I tried out in high school, didn't make it, wah, wah. But when I went to junior college, it was much easier to make that squad. Not as many girls tried out. So I made my junior college squad at Golden West College. And every year they had a tradition of going to the auditions for the Rams cheerleaders. And you, you couldn't have convinced me when I was 19 that not only would I make that squad, 1,300 women tried out for seven rookie spots that year. Not only did I shockingly make that squad, I went on to be a captain and then the director for the Falcon cheerleaders and the Patriots cheerleaders. So I spent 10 years in the NFL and have recently been inducted into the Pro Football Cheerleader Hall of Fame in the
Oh, I didn't
inaugural
know that. That's
class. It
amazing.
just happened. Yeah, I'm in the inaugural class. So 6 of us made the first group ever, the first class ever of professional football cheerleaders.
I
So,
love
but if
that.
you would have told,
Congratulations.
thank you,
Well,
if you would have
it
told
is.
that dorky kid that would have happened, I never would have believed
Well, I
it.
think any male or female reading your book, seeing what you did from being a cheerleader to running it for the Braves and the Patriots, right?
The Falcons and the Patriots,
Falcons,
yeah.
Falcons, and
Uh-huh.
yeah, sorry,
Also
Falcons.
in Atlanta, Braves
Yes,
and
yes,
Falcons are in Atlanta,
exactly.
but yeah,
But
Falcons
I
and the
mean,
Patriots.
incredible that and what I love about everything you do is the fact preparation is at the forefront of everything. Can you just,
Everything. Yeah,
you
I
know,
I think Alan, that is one of the biggest takeaways I want people to have once they read this book. My career and anybody's career that is successful didn't happen by accident. I mean, I know there's some people that are Instagram influencers or people that have one hit wonders in music. And, there are some people that are lucky and, are a rising star for a minute. But for people that have longevity, for people that have long term success at anything, there is a level of dedication, stick to itiveness, and also preparation that you must have before you launch into doing something that's difficult. Um, for me, that as an investigative reporter now, people see me on camera for 3 or 4 minutes doing these investigations,
mhm.
but each investigation requires days, weeks, sometimes months of shooting. And also, I have to read so much research, background information, witness testimony, court documents, expert analysis, different links from local and regional and national news about that subject. So I never go into anything and just grab my microphone and say, "Where's my makeup? And where's the camera? Let's go." Before I
But
pick
you
up,
went after the
yeah,
jobs to lead these cheerleading teams, and you went in with your book, and you were prepared to take
yeah.
that job, and that you know, bravo. I mean, because that takes work, it takes bravery, it takes all of that to
People can always underestimate you. People will underestimate you. You'll find 1,000 people saying, "No, here's why you can't do this, here's why you can't do that." The one thing you have in control, the one thing you can control is yourself and your preparation and your ideas and your enthusiasm for a job. Nobody can take that away from you. If people say you can never achieve that, you can say, "Yes, I can, and I'm going to prove it to you." And the best way to prove it to anybody is to do the work required, the hard work required to be prepared. We can all be prepared no matter what we intend to do.
it's incredible. Like I sort of want to ask, but you keep in every answer you sort of, it's like, you can't really, I think, name one thing what you want people to take away from your book. I mean, there's really a lot in there, but like that is That is one absolute great point about preparation that will
And
help
I didn't,
anybody.
I am by far, I'm probably uh, one of the most surprising television careers in history. I never finished college. I went to a junior college, didn't finish college, so I never got my degree in broadcasting. And yet I've won over 40 investigative journalism awards on the national level, right? My stories have helped put people in prison, have changed, corporate policies, and have changed legislation in Washington, D.C. I'm somebody that didn't have a mother, that was an immigrant's daughter, and yet I'm on television. I wasn't an athlete, but I became a sportscaster. I didn't have a lot of formal training to do a lot of these jobs, but I decided that I wanted to do them, and I was going to work really hard to prove to my detractors that I could do it. And it didn't always work. I've been fired from the biggest jobs in television, right? I faced suicidal ideations at one point. Um, I was depressed. I was drinking too much. I was um, traumatized by a lot of things that had happened to me. I was in a very dark place. But all of those challenges made me more empathetic to other people that have challenges. And I think that's what makes me a good reporter. It's not necessarily that I ask the best questions or I'm the bravest, but I relate to our viewers and I relate to our victims that come to us. I have so much empathy and sympathy, and I want to do a good job for them and for the people that that you know that I'm honored that give me some of their time to watch my stories. That is such an honor that you guys watch my stories or that anybody would read my book. That is the biggest blessing, and I'm so grateful for that. Really grateful.
Yeah, I really, I mean, I even think like your book could be, five people's lives, the things that you've done and careers. I mean, sportscaster, author, artist now as well. The oh,
Soap opera vixen.
yeah, of course, Sunset Beach. We'll get there in a minute. But you, for great reason, sued Robert Kraft.
Yes. So when I was a cheerleader director for the Patriots, I worked for three different owners in the 3 different years I worked for them because the owners kept
Oh God.
selling the team. And so finally on the third owner, they rehired me. I did my job as usual and did a great job and had a wonderful squad. And they were out in the community representing the team at charity events and corporate events. They looked great on the field. They were doing top level choreography and calendars and posters. And they were just such a fantastic squad. Well, just weeks before the first preseason game, the owner's son asked me to turn in my music playlist to him. And, he had been somebody I had been butting heads with. He was my age. He was technically my boss overseeing entertainment for this NFL team. And he had never worked for an NFL team. He had never run an entertainment unit before, but he was the boss's son. And so, he wanted the cheerleaders to be in sexier outfits or to do bikini calendars. And I kept saying no. He wanted to be one of the judges. He wanted to bring his buddies in to watch cheerleaders practicing. And I said no. So I was constantly butting heads with this guy. And finally, I had to turn in my music list to him. And my music list were all the parts of the music that you hear at the stadium throughout the game. So each clip of music is about 30 seconds to 45 seconds in length. And they all come at different times at the game at timeouts, 2-minute warnings, quarter changes, halftime, pregame, postgame. So there's about 30 to 35 pieces of music in this playlist. So I turned over my playlist to him and he looked down at it and he said, I want you to take all the Black music off this list. And at first I thought I misheard him because I didn't think he could have really said that to me. And he said, no, I want you to take all the Black music off this. And by Black music, he meant Prince, Aretha Franklin, Michael Jackson, MC Hammer. This was the 90s. Other, dance music, Motown music, which I had maybe 7 or 8 Black artists on that list out of maybe 30 pieces of music that ranged from rock and roll, classic music to kind of show tunes and country. It's supposed to be a mix of different types of music. Well, I didn't take that music off my list. And the next day I handed in the exact same playlist. And then I was fired from that job just a few weeks before the season started. So I sued them for wrongful termination and I won that lawsuit. And that was a long time ago. But what that taught me is that it doesn't matter what job you have or who you're working for. If somebody asks you to do something uncomfortable, if somebody requires you to do something that you know is wrong, you don't have to do it. You can go to HR, you can get a lawyer, you can fight back in any way you can, but we should never be doing something that we know in our guts is wrong. And I knew that was wrong. So I got a great little attorney, somebody that was out in the suburbs, because no big attorneys would take me because they were afraid of the crafts and they were afraid of the Patriots. But I got Fred Golder, who was an employment expert. He was a legal expert. He's written books on this, and he took my case and we won. And the Patriots wrote me a check, and I left New England and I went back home to Los Angeles to launch my acting and sportscasting career.
It's incredible because you're right. You knew it was wrong. And you just what we were talking about with like my parents, we all have to speak up when we deeply know that is wrong.
Yes. And I mean, it's a hard thing to do, especially when you're new in a career, you're younger, you have visions of growing in that company or growing in that career. To have somebody ask you to do something wrong or harass you in some way. Look, I dealt with a lot of bad bosses in my life, some early and some later. And even when I was older, it was hard to deal with that. It's always hard to deal with, with a boss that asks you to do something wrong or is abusive to you in any way. But again, I go through those things that happened to me in the book, and I really want you to read it. And I really want you to think about what I took away from those experiences, because they all forged a stronger person inside me. But it took time. It took time, and I didn't always make the right decision. But I think I look back now on my life and I'm so glad that I grew into the person that won't ever put up with any of that stuff anymore.
I love how you just said that, because I do think that's what I so loved about the book, because each thing was painful in its own way or wrong in its own way. How you were treated on Monday Night Football, Steven Seagal, so many different things, but one person, Danny DeVito making a difference. There's so many great stories
and John
is,
Madden, I had some great male mentors too. So this book is not just about,
Hugh
hey,
Downs.
these guys that were mean to me. Yes, Hugh Downs, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, what he said to you.
Oh,
I mean,
he was so kind, God rest his soul. And he's such an icon in the world of broadcasting. And for him, I got to work with him in Egypt, in a network special that we did.
No small thing there either. Getting
Thank
to go
you.
to
That
Egypt
was
with Hugh Downs.
with Hugh Downs as his correspondent, and then sitting at the anchor desk with him at the end of this live event, and then having him pull me aside later saying, you should really be a newscaster. Let me help you. Because at the time I was doing sports, and he thought that I was kind of wasting my career or throwing it away on sports. He saw something in me that, was encouraging me to pursue, a bigger part of the storytelling pie, right? Which was journalism writ large, news. And he really encouraged me about that. At the time, I wasn't ready to listen because I was still in the throes of building my career in sports. But I use that as an example to show that there were so many men that were amazing to me, were mentors to me that helped me along the way. So there were some men that I point out by name that weren't so great to me. And, every woman that's been in any business for very long has had some issues with some male colleagues or bosses. This book isn't just about that. It's also about the people that guided me, that helped me, that gave me great advice. Whether or not I took it at the time is another story. But
I think that will help people to possibly listen more and maybe, take that in and, knowing that, it was a few years after Hugh saying that you end up at Inside Edition.
Yes. And what was really interesting is when I became an investigative reporter years later for Inside Edition, I worked with one of Hugh Downs' old producers, Bob Reed, my old investigative reporter who sadly passed away from COVID. And he was one of my mentors as well. So you just never know where these mentors come from, but you have to be able to listen to people and take advice and leave your options open, and also be willing to learn. Don't think you know everything, because you don't. Listen to other people that want to guide you and help you and make you a better person, broadcaster, actor, teacher, whatever you are. Listen to other people, because they have great advice for us if only we care to listen to it.
Well, now knowing that Charlie's Angels was a big part of your childhood, what was it like when you learned you'd be auditioning for Aaron Spelling?
Okay, so can we just talk about Aaron? First of all, I couldn't wrap my mind around it, because when my manager called and said, you've been called in to audition for Sunset Beach, and I obviously knew what Sunset Beach was. I knew who Aaron Spelling was. I just thought, well, there's no way I'm going to get this role. There's no way, but I'm going to go for it, because how thrilling would it be to be on an Aaron Spelling show? So I auditioned originally for the part of Maria, not Francesca. Francesca wasn't even born yet. That was not written yet. I auditioned for the role of Maria, who was she was also Latina, but she was a much softer character. And, she had been through a trauma. And the audition scene was, well, first of all, I got through the first rounds of the auditions. And finally, I found out that I got a camera test. So now I'm going to go ahead and do a chemistry and camera test for the role of Maria. And, in the makeup room, I think were 3 other actresses that were also testing, including Christina Chambers, who played an amazing Maria, by the way, gorgeous and so talented, and a couple of other actresses were in there as well.
Kelly Garrett in the Charlie's Angels movie.
And full circle. We're coming full circle here. So but the way I chose to play that role, that scene was, that character had just had a sexual trauma, and she was broken and she was crying in the scene, and the other actresses played it like that. Well, I decided I was going to play her with a lot of strength. And I decided that if that had happened to me, I would be furious and I would want revenge. And I bust into my audition on camera with Timothy Adams, who played opposite in the camera test. I threw the door open and went charging into the room, furious, full of this anger and intensity. And Timothy Adams looked at me and completely forgot his lines, which never happens. He's not the one auditioning. He already had his role. I'm the one that's supposed to forget my lines.
Yeah.
But he was so shocked that I came out, like that. And so he apologized and we did the scene again. And I thought, well, I'm definitely not getting this role, because the other women played her different. And I, of course, blew the test because, Timothy was so shocked. And I thought, well, there goes that. I'm never going to get on that show. And I was so disappointed. And then weeks later, my manager gets a phone call and she says, "You're never going to believe this. Aaron Spelling saw your audition for Maria, and he thought that you reminded him of Rita Hayworth in Gilda, which was apparently one of his favorite films. And it's one of my favorite films. And in my house in Hollywood Hills, at the time I lived in a little Spanish style house up on Woodrow Wilson, I had a framed poster of Gilda because Rita Hayworth was my favorite too. And he thought I reminded him of Gilda in that film. So he had a role written for me
I mean,
in Sunset
that
Beach.
right there had to be, I mean,
Incredible,
growing up on
surreal.
his programming, and, the legend wrote a role specifically for Lisa
Yeah.
Guerrero.
I still had to audition. I still tried out. I still did the camera test and everything, but I was cast in it. And I will never forget just how kind that was, and how much of a brilliant producer that is, to look at somebody's camera test that didn't get the role and think, wait a minute, she's right for something else. I want her on my show. Let's write something for her. And she reminds me of this. And in fact, that character, Francesca Vargas, was based on that Gilda character, an international jewel thief. So there's all kinds of parallels between Francesca and Gilda, the Rita Hayworth character. So if you ever go back, Sunset Beach fans, watch Gilda and you'll see why he cast me in that role and why he wrote it like that.
I love that. And, Michael Sabatino on one side and Eddie Cibrian on another. I mean, really a rough life on Sunset Beach for you.
It was such a dream come true. But really it was difficult because I had never been on a soap opera, and the amount of work, the amount that I had to memorize every night was overwhelming. I wasn't prepared for that. I cried the first time they threw me, the first week of scripts. And, I was thrown into the center of this summertime plot line, which was Shockwave. Remember the tidal wave? And that's how Francesca's introduced. And all of a sudden I'm in the middle of these major storylines. And I didn't think I would ever be able to memorize all of those scenes. But as time went on, I realized the memory is a muscle as well. And as we memorize more and more, it gets easier and easier. So at the end of that year, I was able to just pick up a script, and now they were writing Francesca for me in my voice. So they realized what my strengths were as an actor, and they were writing right to that. And so I could look at a scene one time, memorize it, and show up on the set and know my lines. So that's a really amazing thing that human beings can do. That memory is a muscle if we use it.
And you were doing double duty.
Yeah, so Monday through Fridays, I played Francesca on Sunset Beach on NBC, and Saturdays and Sundays and Tuesdays and Thursday nights, I was a sportscaster for CBS 2 in Los Angeles. So I was CBS 2's first female sportscaster to earn a contract. And so I was working 7 days a week, both as an actor during the week and a sportscaster on the weekends, with 0 days off. I think I went something like a year or 13 months without one single day off. Not a Christmas, not New Year's, because Christmas I would cover the Lakers. Lakers play every Christmas. New Year's, of course, was the Rose Bowl game. So there's a big college bowl game on New Year's. Thanksgiving, there were games always on Thanksgiving. So I literally did not have a game or a day off at all for, I think it was like 13 and a half months.
That's
but I
incredible.
loved it. It was an amazing time.
I mean, a workaholic. You share so many stories that we're not going to get to touch on, but I want everybody to read the book, the Barbie story. But you had, and this is full circle because you mentioned the Playboy series that you're hosting.
Yeah.
And that is sort of full circle. You had, as a young girl, used to go to the Playboy Mansion, and then for many years were asked to do the cover. And please share, because it leads to you ending up where you have made your home for the last 17 years.
Well, as a teenager, I was a model. I told you that I, was a model and actress a young woman, and I was doing a lot of swimwear modeling and fitness modeling. And I was signed by Playboy models, not to be a nude model or to do, to be a playmate, but to do a lot of fitness wear and a lot of, I was the Nautilus girl, I was the Gold's Gym girl, I was doing all these swimsuit campaigns all over the world through Playboy models. But one of the things they required is that on Friday nights, you had to go to the mansion and make an appearance at movie night. And I would show up at movie night, not to meet any producers or to date. I would show up with empty Tupperware in my bag and fill up on all the free food at the buffet. And then I'd sneak out and leave before anybody hit on me. So that was my wild time at the Playboy Mansion. So years go by, and I've built a career as a sportscaster and an actor. And Playboy started coming to me, asking me first to be a playmate, which I said no to, and then to be a celebrity cover for the magazine. And I kept turning it down. This went on for 20 years, you guys. Holy moly. And finally, after I got married, my husband at the time, who was a baseball player, said, why don't you do it? It's an iconic brand. If you're on the cover, you're now 40. If you're on the cover, this would be like a big deal for your image. You're a brunette. Most of the cover girls are young blondes, and this would be great for you. Why not? And so with the blessing of my husband, I did the cover of Playboy magazine at 40. So the years go by, and suddenly I get asked last year to be the host of Secrets of Playboy on A&E, because they liked the fact that I had a Playboy connection, but I didn't have an axe to grind against Hugh Hefner or anybody at Playboy, because nothing bad had ever happened to me in my experience with Playboy. But I did know that there was a darkness at the mansion, and I saw bad things happen to other girls back then. That's why I got out as quickly as I could. And I didn't want to drink or be around any of that at the time. So fast forward, now I'm hosting Secrets of Playboy, which has really been, as you say, Alan, full circle, because it brings back to me the concept of how vulnerable young women are in this industry. People come here from all over the country, all over the world. They come to Hollywood to be a model or to be an actress or to be discovered.
Stars in their eyes, right? That's what they call it.
Stars in their eyes. And they're naive, some of them, and some of them are scared, and some of them think that these men can help them. And in some cases, these men can help them. So it's a very difficult thing for a young woman to navigate. And that's why what happened to a lot of those young women within the Playboy world are stories that are important for us to talk about. I believe the women that tell me their stories, but I also know that those bad things didn't happen to all the women at Playboy. A lot of women had great experiences like I did. And, not all of them were assaulted or demeaned in any way, but it did happen to some of them. And it happened to enough of them that we should pay attention and listen, so it doesn't happen to the next generation of young women.
Absolutely. But that cover and the article in the magazine, you manifested the job at Inside Edition.
I did. I talked about wanting to. So my whole platform, when I was on the cover, I got to have a media campaign, right? Because they sent me out to talk about the cover on TV shows and magazines and in the magazine itself. And I kept saying, I want to be on an entertainment news show. I want to cover entertainment or news or pop culture. I want to get out of sports and do other kinds of reporting. And because of that platform that Playboy gave me as a cover, by doing all that publicity, Inside Edition saw me. And they did a story about me being 40 years old and on the cover of Playboy, and their audiences liked me. And a couple of weeks later, I was offered a 2-year contract with Inside Edition as the West Coast correspondent. And that grew into me being promoted to chief investigative correspondent with the show. And I've now been with the show for 17 years, thanks to taking a huge risk with Playboy.
But, another lesson, manifest, articulate. Yes. You used one opportunity to bridge another opportunity.
It's so important that we do that in our lives. Small things and big things. We need to put it out there in the universe. We need to tell other people. We need to write it down and journal it. We need to post it on social media. We need to make people know what our dreams and our goals are because they're achievable. And through a network of your friends and colleagues, you will get to that next place you want to be in your life, personal life or professional life. But yeah, manifest those good intentions. It works.
Well, before I let you go, what have those last 17 years and those awards for the work you're doing there meant to you?
It's been such an honor and a blessing. I'm grateful every day to, at 58, have a job on television, first of all, as a woman. As we know, our careers are
Sadly,
typically cut
yes.
short. It's cut
Yeah.
short once we get the wrinkles and the gray hair, etc. So, I've been really lucky that I've been able to have a very long career on television. Um, and I'm lucky that I've been able to really help fight for accountability as a journalist. I think more women should consider investigative journalism as a career goal. I want young women, I want Latinas, I want people of color to consider journalism. It is the way to make our country better, to help solve problems and crises. There are a lot of ways that we can do good in the world. We can be a good person. We can be loving to the people that are in our lives today. We can, post things on social media that help people, that inspire people, that point out, problems so that we can fix them. And one of the things that you can go into politics, which I've thought about too. But one of the things that I knew was important to me at this point was to help shine a light on wrongdoing. And that's why I'm so grateful for Inside Edition and mainly to our fans that have supported and watched my stories on the show and also on YouTube because, Inside Edition has 11 million subscribers on YouTube
Wow.
and they binge my stories. They binge all my investigations. So thank you for that.
How long is Inside Edition on the air now? Do you know?
30 years. Inside Edition is number one. We are the number one news magazine in syndication with over 5 million viewers a night. And we are number one in YouTube with over 11 million subscribers. We're number one in news and politics on YouTube. And we have been around for 30 years. Inside Edition is one of the longest running, most successful TV shows in history.
Bravo. That's amazing. I knew it was a long time. I mean, if you're there 17, I know it. Wow, 30 years. That's
Yeah,
incredible. Lisa,
amazing.
congratulations on your book, really, and thank you for spending this hour. You are an inspiration, and I think, anybody picking up this book is going to feel empowered. Really, your voice matters in so many different ways that you articulate through your struggles and pain. A lot of it is pain too, but you took that pain and now, have an incredible purpose.
Thank you. And if the people out there watching, if you do read the book, please get back to me and let me know what you think about it and what you gained from it. I do want to hear feedback because I wrote this with the purpose of helping others. And if it touched you in some way, or if there was some small nugget that was important to you, I want to hear about it. So make sure to reach. I'm very reachable. I'm on Twitter and Facebook and yeah, I have my own YouTube channel and I'm on Instagram, I'm everywhere, LinkedIn, for goodness sakes. But reach out to me and let me know
And
what you
all of
think of the
that will
book.
be up on the YouTube channel underneath, so people can always find it and to purchase the book as well, which I encourage everybody to pick up. Warrior, My Path to Being Brave today. It is out now. Lisa,
Thank
be
you.
well, stay well. Stay backstage for just a quick sec, and I'll see you in a second.
Thank you so much for having me, Alan. Thank you for having me back.
You're so
And I
welcome. I'm
appreciate you
so
reading
glad.
the book
I
and giving me a platform. Thank you.
I wanted to have you back listening to you during our Sunset Beach interview because you were an incredible interviewee, or whatever the right word is, and just reading your story before your book, just learning about your path. I wanted to have you back. And then I got that email that you were putting your book out. So it was a perfect time.
Yay. Thank you.
You're
Thanks
so
so much,
welcome.
Alan.
Be well. Thanks everybody for watching. Again, thank you to Lisa Guerrero. And as I said, please do yourself a favor and pick up her book now, where all books are sold. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't done so. You can turn on the notifications for reminders of all upcoming shows. And if you want to download an audio version, you can search The Locker Room on your favorite streaming platform. Please stay well, be safe, as always, and have a great evening, everybody.